All right, so we are on a Chromebook again, and we're using a program called Gravit. So if you go to gravit.io, then that will take you here. Um, you'll choose Start Now, and it'll look like this as soon as it loads up here. Choose New Design. Web or desktop is fine, and then website medium is fine. And initially it might feel disorienting, but it's not that far off. Just kind of shift it around from what Illustrator is. So here's your layers. If you need to add or delete a layer, you can do that here. Just a couple of tools, the pen tool and the shape tool. You can add text if you want. We're going to add an image here in just a moment. Over here is where you'll customize anything that you put in there. We're going to experiment with symbols here briefly as well. So let's start out by placing our image. So I'm going to go to the little image icon, place image. I'm going to start out with the one that's the black line, and we'll open it. Great. So at this point, you have some options. You can make it kind of abstract. Well, it's going to be abstract in one way or another, but more or less abstract. So I'm going to lock this image in place. So I'm going to select it, same black arrow tool, same shortcut to get the black arrow tool pulled up, which is V, and I'm going to lock it for now. I'm going to use the pen tool. It says the path tool, I suppose, but P is still the shortcut for it. And I'm just going to make these large for this particular picture, leaves, like they're kind of leaves in birds in a tree and leaves in a tree. If you're doing something that is like a coffee cup, maybe you have steam, or maybe you have shapes of plates underneath. But watch what I'm going to do here. Just very simple. I'm going to drag, just like in Illustrator. If I click on this anchor point, it will end the curve. I'm going to push down. I haven't let go yet, and drag. And now I have this shape. It's filled with white. I can come down here, change the color. One thing I would encourage you to do is try to avoid just these obvious, really bright colors. Try to find more nuanced colors that have some interest to them. And we'll look at that more in a moment. And down here, it's not called stroke in Gravit, it's called borders. We're going to change that to 0. And there's different things I can do now. I can change the opacity. What I'm going to choose to do is change the blend mode. There's a lot of different options. The best thing, the name of the game this moment in time is experimenting. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong, and I could try to show you every single one, but ultimately there's more varieties and more ideas out there. I just need you to try different solutions here. So I could try color burn, and that didn't really do much for me. On a different setting, it might, right? So what about overlay? Okay. What about multiply? That's what I'm looking for. So, and that's fine. You just experiment and try different things. I'm going to choose the selection tool, and I can move those around. So I'm going to hit Control C, Control V. You want to avoid having all of your shapes be identical. You want them to have variety to them. You also want to avoid, remember we called those tangents, where they just like barely touch there, or they barely touch like that. You want to avoid those as much as possible. Control C, Control V. Hold Shift if you want it to be resized identically. Control C, Control V. And I do want some of the reason that I chose this blend mode where it's multiply is I do want some overlap like that. So maybe I also come down and I choose color adjust, and I just want to experiment with different variations of that color. That can be pretty neat. We'll choose blending mode, multiply up here as well. The reason that's ending at the top there is that's where the edge of the page is. I like this blue and green. Try to think of colors that are analogous, that are like colors that are similar to each other. Control C, Control V. All right. So this is something that you can experiment with until you find a spot that you're happy with it. I wish I could tell you there was a formula. The best bet I can tell you is to take advantage of my office hours to have some time to actually show me what you've worked on and have some quality conversation about the progress that's being made, about what you're liking, what you're not sure about. Don't wait until the very end for that to take place, or when it's the day that it's due. And you can see I'm just testing things out, trying little variations here and there to see what's going to be the best solution. Okay, so these are, and this is one of those tangents that I was just talking about right there. I want to try to avoid that if I can. So I'm going to just rotate it more. You're not going to avoid all of them, but if you can avoid a bunch of them, that's great. Control C, Control V. I don't know if this is going to work, but what I'm going to try is I'm going to try changing the color. I think that kind of works. It feels like it belongs in a similar kind of color scheme there. And maybe I'll introduce this now, and I'll limit myself to these 3 colors. Shrink that down. Notice how I'm having different sizes. Maybe I'll even do some that are real small now with this kind of tan color. You want to try to find a sense of balance, figure out what looks like it's a good, it doesn't feel like there's too much on one side or the other. Yeah, I liked it larger like that. All right. Ultimately, you're going to experiment with a variety of solutions. If you decide that you don't like these shapes, you can just clear them. So I'm just going to select them all here and delete for a moment, because you can try just doing kind of abstract shapes. If you look at the examples, you'll notice that there are lots of examples that have abstract shapes. So I'm going to change the fill color. Could be totally abstract colors too. Maybe you think this eventually would look cool in your house somewhere. Okay, so then what am I going to do to make that show up again? I'm going to change the blending mode to, we'll say, multiply. And I'm going to turn off that stroke. All right. And then I'm going to choose the pen tool again. And remember, I don't have to click again here unless I'm ending that curve. I want to, just emphasize again that don't just feel like, okay, I've got a couple shapes down. I'm thinking you'll have at least 3 or 4. You may have as many as 20. It all depends on, does it look like it's a good product that you're proud of. If you need to make some adjustments to your anchor points, you can come over here to the sub select. And that will allow you to move your anchor points. So you could do it all similar colors here if you like. Or all the same color rather. I'm going to end this video because I feel like it's getting kind of long. Test this out. See what directions you want to take your project.